In a small town in the United Kingdom, Michael gets into a moving van with his parents, and the family sets off for their new home. As soon as they arrive at the residence, the boy is totally disappointed, as he realizes they are about to move to a dirty and run-down place. Trying to cheer up his son, Dave explains that they need to live in a more spacious house, since Louise, the mother of the family, is pregnant. Despite this, Michael can't feel any excitement about moving to that place, and walks up to the attic to continue his exploration. While looking at things, the young man is surprised by a crow, and after giving the boy a big scare, the bird flies to a shed outside. Curious about the way the furniture is scattered around the house, Michael asks his father who the last resident was, and Dave says he was just an ordinary old man who ended up perishing in the kitchen. After that, the young man asks where his room will be and asks to have the suite on the second floor. However, Louise says they will need that room to take care of the baby and reveals that Michael can have the attic as his own room, as it will give him much more privacy. So, the young man finishes packing his things in his new room, and after a night's sleep, he wakes up to dozens of spider webs around him. Concerned, Michael goes to talk to his mother about what happened, but she simply replies that the spiders are harmless and he doesn't need to worry. In addition, Louise asks her son to skip school and stay home so he can help her with some household chores. This request makes Michael excited, but when he hears his mother talking about the decorations she wants to put up in the baby's room, he loses the desire to stay home and lies, saying he has an important test. The woman tries to explain that she can call the school and talk about the situation, but her son ignores her and leaves for school, where he participates in music and swimming classes alongside his friends. During practice at the gym pool, Mr. Hunt realizes that Michael has not yet taken any of the tests and orders him to get on the diving board to make a jump immediately. Upon hearing this, the boy panics, and as his friend walks toward the ladder, Lakey says that the boy shouldn't jump from such a high point, since he is afraid of heights. Outraged, the man makes fun of Michael, and realizing that the young man will not be able to jump, he orders the boy to return to the group so they can begin long-distance swimming training. Minutes later, in the locker room, Coot begins to reprimand his colleague's behavior, and furious, Lakey defends his friend and hits the troublemaker on the arm with a towel. Michael thanks his friend and asks if he would like to leave with him and his father. However, Lakey replies that he will stay at school for a while longer, as the situation at home is still not so good, with his mother and stepfather continuing to argue. Michael then leaves, and when he is at home eating a sandwich, the young man sees a small mouse running around his feet, and, amused, he decides to follow the animal. At the same time, Louise, who was cleaning the kitchen inside, feels an extremely intense pain in her stomach and screams for her son. Despite hearing her call, Michael decides to ignore his mother, and when he sees the rodent entering the shed in the backyard, he pushes the door open. In desperation, Louise realizes that her water is about to break and tries to walk toward her cell phone so she can call an ambulance. Inside the shed, Michael comes across dozens of insects and old objects scattered on the shelves, and before he can continue exploring, he hears a scary voice asking who he is. Terrified, the young man runs outside, and upon hearing his mother's screams once again, he rushes to help her and calls the hospital to request an ambulance. Hours later, Dave meets his son in the waiting room and tells him that Michael has just gotten a new little sister. This news makes the young man happy, and he sees his little sister in the post-surgery room. Later, after returning home, Dave goes to check the cabin where his son heard the strange voice, but he finds nothing unusual and asks the boy to stay away from that place, as it could collapse at any moment. Although he doesn't understand where that voice came from, Michael decides to help his father organize the house, and hours later, he goes outside. While walking through the garden, the boy is surprised by Mina, a resident of a nearby house, who is excited to finally have a neighbor to interact with. After the conversation, Michael enters the abandoned cabin once again, and during his investigation, he sees a human hand pointing in his direction. Confused, the young man asks who it is, and the mysterious voice orders him to leave. Realizing that it seems to be an adult man, Michael feels threatened and runs to alert his father. However, noticing that Dave is on a strange call with Louise, the young man decides to remain silent, and upon seeing his son, the man closes the bedroom door. The next day, Lakey gives Michael a ticket to the diving tournament, and the boy is excited to know that he will be able to watch the competition. Soon after, the young man reveals to his friend about the mysterious man he found in the cabin of his house, but Lakey says he must be just a homeless man and asks him to let it go. During class, Michael opens his backpack to get one of his supplies and screams when he notices that the compartment is full of insects. This causes the entire classroom to panic, and to control the situation, the teacher calms his students and orders the boy to close the desk lid immediately. Later, Michael returns home confused and goes to check on the mysterious man in the cabin, who seems to be blinking strangely. While being watched by the boy, the man picks up one of the snails from the wall and begins to devour it, making the young man increasingly nauseated by his behavior. Michael then asks if he is the former resident of the house, but the intruder replies that he is not, and says that he is nothing more than an old piece of trash from the cabin. Wanting to change the man's situation, the boy asks him to let him help him, but the man refuses and orders Michael to leave. Days later, the young man watches his parents talking to one of the doctors, who seems to be explaining the baby's current health situation. Realizing that something is wrong, Michael approaches Louise and asks if everything is okay. The woman replies that it is, but the young man does not believe her, and as soon as his parents walk away to talk to the doctor, he uses a stethoscope to listen to the baby's heartbeat. Thanks to this, Michael discovers that his little sister has an unusual heartbeat and wonders what it could be. Hours later, the young man balances on a low wall in front of his house when he is surprised by Mina, causing him to fall to the ground. As she approaches, the young woman asks why he didn't mention having a younger sister, and Michael replies that the baby is still in the hospital and doesn't even have a name yet. Unsure about the girl's visit, he asks if she doesn't go to school, but Mina reveals that she is taught by her mother and therefore has a much more advanced knowledge than other young people her age. At dusk, Michael waits until his father is asleep and goes outside, where he picks up leftover food from the trash to take it to the cabin. As soon as he sees the food brought by the boy, the man eats eagerly, but suddenly, he ends up choking. Concerned, Michael tries to help him, but the man yells at the young man to stay away, and when he looks at the homeless man's back, the boy realizes that he has something in his spine. In addition, the student finds a bird feather on the table next to him and wonders why it is there. As the days go by, due to the rain, the hut becomes infested with various types of mushrooms, which begin to surround the weakened man. With the baby's treatment complete, Louise can finally return home, and is happy to see the renovations that her husband and son have made. At that moment, the woman sees the abandoned hut in the garden and asks why Dave hasn't destroyed it yet, but the man says that Michael seems to be using the shelves to store something. Therefore, until he can find some boxes and shelves for the boy, the man has decided to keep the shed standing. In the morning, Michael and his classmates practice long jump on the school field, and knowing that the student's performance will not be good, Mr. Hunt turns to talk to the boys. At that moment, the man in the cabin performs a kind of strange spell, which enables the young man to jump over 6 meters, but both are disappointed when they realize that no one saw this historic feat. Later, Michael arrives home to deliver some medicine to his new friend and prevents him from eating the mushrooms, saying they may be poisonous. The next day, Michael has fun in the woods with Lakey, pretending to be soldiers in combat. During their fun, the young men hide to observe the animals around them and spot a hare approaching. While watching the animal, Michael notices that it seems to blink in a strange way, similar to the man in the cabin. This discovery makes the boy curious, and he decides to run back home. However, when he gets there, he hears his parents arguing, approaches the bedroom, and watches them through the crack in the door. During the argument, Louise claims that there is something wrong with the baby, and yet the doctors decided to discharge her. The woman then blames her husband for everything that is happening, saying that he only made them move to that place to feed his ego and live in a bigger house. Trying to calm her down, Dave says he did it for the family, and especially for his wife, but she doesn't believe him. This whole situation leaves Michael completely shaken, and at the same time, the man in the cabin begins to cry, as if he were seeing and hearing everything that is happening in the house. The next day, the couple decides to take the baby back to the hospital, where the doctors conclude that it will be best to continue her hospitalization. Meanwhile, Michael remains saddened by what he heard the night before, and when she encounters her neighbor in that state, Mina asks him to follow her, as she wants to show him something. The pair then run into the middle of the forest and arrive at a large abandoned tower. Michael asks what it is, and the girl reveals that it is her resting place, where she sits to observe the landscape and express her feelings. Later, the boy returns to the cabin and is startled to find the man unconscious. However, he was only sleeping, and after venting about what is happening to his sister, the young man says he is thinking of bringing someone to help him. Upon hearing this, the man refuses the idea, and Michael becomes furious, saying that he is tired of seeing everyone around him consumed by sadness, and all he wants is to be able to help in some way. Realizing how much the young man is suffering, the man decides to accept the help. Irritated, Michael leaves the cabin and returns with Mina the next day. When she sees the state of the man's health, the young woman is devastated and takes one of his hands, realizing that he is suffering from advanced calcification, as his body is becoming increasingly rigid and dysfunctional. After meeting the man, the pair return to the forest and conclude that this person is not a human being like them. Hours later, Michael keeps his father company, and after removing all the mushrooms that have appeared on his son's wall, the man checks part of the attic floor. In doing so, Dave realizes that part of the wood is rotting, and says he will go to the shed to get the materials to repair it. Realizing that his father is about to find the mysterious man, Michael thinks quickly and decides to jump from his bed onto the fragile floor, causing him to fall to the floor below. Hearing his son fall, Dave runs desperately toward the house, where he finds the boy lying on his bed with an injured foot. During the night, while his parents stay with the baby, Michael waits in the hospital corridors when he comes across Grace, an elderly lady he sees from time to time. Noticing the young man's sadness, the elderly woman asks him to have faith in his little sister, and at that moment, she remembers the frail man the boy had told her about. Grace gives Michael a bottle of cod liver oil, saying it will help his friend recover from the pain. Excited, the boy thanks her for the gift and asks if he can visit her in her room when possible. This request makes Grace happy, and she accepts the idea. Minutes later, the young man's parents decide to tell him the truth about his sister, and Louise reveals that the baby has a rare heart condition that prevents her heart from functioning properly. Devastated by this news, Michael places the feather he found in the cabin on top of his little sister's capsule, asking her to get well soon. Dave then takes his son home, and angry at having brought his own family to live in that horrible place, he decides to destroy the cabin, since his wife had asked him to do so a long time ago. In a panic, Michael tries to stop his father, but without success, and as soon as the man goes to the house to get his lighter, the boy runs to rescue his friend. Without wasting any time, Michael tells him they need to leave, and despite hearing the homeless man telling him to leave him, the young man does not give up and carries him on his back. At the same time, Dave pours a gallon of fuel around the cabin and lights the fire, starting a huge blaze. At the last second, Michael manages to escape with his friend, and after leaving him in the woods, he asks the man to stay there for a while and runs to comfort his father, who is crying inconsolably. Once he manages to help Dave fall asleep, Michael goes to Mina's trailer and tells her what happened, revealing that part of his hand was burned in the fire. Soon after, the pair take the man to the tower in the forest and ask him who he really is. The man replies that his real name is Skellig and that he has lived in that world since its creation. Days later, the young men bring some food for their friend and decide to remove his coat so he can rest properly. Frightened, Skellig tries to stop them, but without success, and when they remove his coat, the pair are confronted with a large injured wing. This discovery confuses the young people, and while his body is being examined, the man lies down, asking them to let him sleep for a while. The next day, the teenagers return to the tower to find their friend, who is being fed by an owl. Upon seeing the man devouring what appears to be the body of a rodent, the pair are frightened, but he tries to calm them down and asks them to come closer. Although reluctant, the young people walk towards Skellig, who holds their hands and makes them all begin to float, leaving them excited. Soon after, the group falls to the ground, and after saying goodbye to the man, Michael and Mina leave the tower. Outside, the pair realize that the burn on the boy's hand has disappeared, and conclude that Skellig has healing powers. Analyzing the situation, the young people conclude that they need to help their friend recover so that he can fly again. So, the pair start bringing Skellig various foods, as well as helping him wash his wings so that they become healthy again. After that, the man stands up so that his wings can bask in the sun, and the next day, during class, Michael receives news from his teacher, who reveals that his parents have sent him a message. Upon discovering that his sister is in serious condition, the young man runs to ask Skellig for help, but he says there is nothing that can be done and asks his friend to leave him alone. This response infuriates Michael, and despite knowing how sad the situation is, the man simply apologizes and stands by his decision. At the same time, Lakey prepares to perform his dive in the school tournament and is disappointed to notice that his best friend is not there to watch him. The boy then jumps off the diving board, but loses his balance and lands badly in the pool, being disqualified from the competition. Meanwhile, Michael meets with Mina and tells her about his sister's condition, who will have to undergo another risky surgery. Wanting to cheer up her friend, the young woman invites him to spend the night at her house, and the next day, Dave decides to go for a walk with his son. During the walk, Michael reveals that he wants to stay at the hospital with his parents, but his father does not allow it and orders him to spend another night at Mina's house so they can go to school together. However, the boy replies that he has always known about the baby's health and claims to know that she has a low chance of survival. Upon hearing this, Dave hugs his son, trying to comfort him, and allows him to accompany them to the hospital the next day. Taking advantage of the fact that they are waiting for more news about the baby, the boy decides to visit Grace, but when he arrives at the second-floor ward, he cannot find her. Confused, Michael asks the nurses about the elderly woman's whereabouts, and the woman replies that Grace passed away the night before. This news devastates the boy, and wanting to leave, he runs out of the hospital to find Skellig. On the way, the young man is spotted by Lakey, who decides to follow him to ask why he didn't show up. With no time to lose, Michael promises he will explain everything later, and realizing that the boy is hiding something, Lakey tries to enter the tower. Furious, Michael stops his friend and yells at Skellig to run away. At that moment, an owl appears above the young men, and Lakey tries to shoot it. Quickly, Michael stops the boy, and after a brief struggle between the two, he intimidates his friend, ordering him to leave. Confused by the young man's behavior, Lakey gives up trying to understand what is happening and leaves the tower. Upon reaching the top, Michael encounters Skellig, whose wings have almost completely healed. While the man examines his injuries, the boy claims that he can fly if he really tries, and to encourage him, he decides to go to the edge of the tower. Without thinking twice, Michael takes a leap, and at the last second, he is rescued by Skellig, who flies freely alongside his friend. Excited, the pair spend some time traveling through the skies, but suddenly, the man decides to gain even more altitude, causing the boy to lose consciousness. After that, Skellig leaves his friend in a safe place and travels to the hospital, where he walks silently past each of the employees. Soon after, the man arrives at the room where Louise and her baby are resting after a long surgery. He then opens the baby's capsule, and after picking her up in his arms, Skellig begins to float around the room, using his powers to remove her serious illness. Far away, Michael is found by Mina in the middle of the forest, and remembering what happened, he runs to the hospital. Relieved, the family watches the baby resting in her crib, and while celebrating the miraculous cure, Louise says she had a strange dream where she saw a man with wings watching them. Upon hearing this, Michael feels happy, and realizing that his parents have not yet found a name for his sister, he suggests that she be called Grace. The couple approves of the idea, and as the days go by, Michael manages to get closer and closer to his father, in addition to making peace with his friend Lakey. Hours later, Dave and his son show Grace her newly renovated room, and Louise is moved because, despite the difficulties, the family has finally managed to return to their normal life. Finally, Michael and Mina have a picnic with Skellig at the top of the tower, who now says goodbye to his friends, as he must leave. Curious, the boy asks if the man is some kind of angel, and he says that his friend can consider him to be one. After saying goodbye, Mina and Michael run through the field playing soccer, feeling happy that everything has turned out well. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.